In an age overflowing with endless possibilities, knowledge, and tools designed to empower us, a strange paradox persists. So many remain stuck, frozen in place, unable to take even the smallest step forward. Despite having access to more information than ever before, the key ingredient, the act of moving from intention to action, often remains elusive. Why is it that knowing what to do rarely translates into actually doing it? Is this a failure of will? Or is something deeper at play, an invisible force lodged within the fabric of our minds and the society around us? We are living in a world where the very abundance of choice becomes a cage, where freedom to act becomes suffocating indecision. It isn't simply laziness or lack of motivation. It is a complex web of psychological resistance, fear, and conditioning. Fear of failure, fear of judgment, fear of the unknown, fear that paralyzes before we even begin. This resistance is so primal, so deeply ingrained, that it often feels impossible to overcome. But what if the solution lies not in waiting for inspiration or motivation to strike, but in the deliberate, sometimes brutal act of forcing ourselves to take action every single day? Not when it feels easy, but precisely when it feels hardest. This struggle is an internal battleground where the mind wages war against itself, a psychological thriller played out in the choices we refuse or dare to make. The battle is not just against procrastination, but against the very mechanisms that keep us passive, mechanisms shaped by evolution, culture, and unseen societal forces. In the following exploration, we will unravel this paradox, tracing its roots through history, psychology, and philosophy. We will expose the forces that hold us back and discover the discipline required to reclaim control over our lives. Because in a world built to keep us still, the greatest rebellion is to move, step by step, day by day, forcing action even when every part of us resists. Throughout history, the fate of entire civilizations has hinged on moments of decisive action or haunting inaction. The threads of human destiny are woven not only by grand ideas, but by the will to act upon them, often against overwhelming odds. Consider the Renaissance, a period that transformed the world through a daring refusal to accept the old order. It was not merely a time of discovery, but a revolution of action, where individuals chose to break free from the inertia of centuries-long tradition. Visionaries like Leonardo da Vinci and Galileo forced themselves to question the world, to act on radical ideas that challenged the very foundations of knowledge. Their courage to act in defiance of convention reshaped human understanding forever. Yet history is equally marked by the chilling consequences of collective paralysis. Empires that once flourished crumbled under the weight of complacency, their people frozen in fear or distraction while crises deepened. The fall of the Roman Empire, for example, was not simply the result of external invasion, but also a failure to adapt and act decisively amidst internal decay. Societies that fail to confront their challenges head-on invite collapse. Revolutions offer some of the most striking examples of action transforming reality. The American Revolution was born from the refusal to accept tyranny, fueled by countless individuals who forced themselves beyond fear and comfort to demand freedom. But just as power can be seized through decisive acts, so too can opportunities slip away when people hesitate. The French Revolution spiraled into chaos partly because of missed chances for peaceful reform, moments when inaction bred violence. Scientific progress, too, is a story of persistent action, overcoming doubt and resistance. When Marie Curie devoted herself to pioneering research on radioactivity, she faced not only scientific skepticism, but also societal barriers. Her relentless daily commitment transformed science and medicine, reminding us that breakthroughs emerge from sustained effort against inertia. In every corner of history, whether in art, politics, or science, the difference between stagnation and transformation is often a single choice to act. The people who move history forward are rarely the most gifted or fortunate. They are the ones who push through resistance, who force themselves to take the next step when everything inside screams to stop. This historical perspective is more than a chronicle of past events. It is a mirror reflecting the urgent truth that our personal struggle with inaction is part of a larger human drama. The same forces that shaped empires and revolutions pulse within each of us. The call to act is not just individual, it is collective and timeless. If entire civilizations have risen and fallen on the willingness to act, what then does it say about the power of forcing oneself to move forward, day by day, in the seemingly small battles of modern life? At the heart of our struggle to act lies a paradox deeply embedded in the architecture of the human mind. We know what must be done. We feel the urgency. Yet somehow the act of doing remains just out of reach. This resistance is not a simple flaw or laziness. It is a complex psychological defense mechanism designed to protect us, yet often traps us in cycles of inaction. Our brains are wired to seek comfort and avoid pain. The comfort zone is not just a cliché. It is a real neurological space where predictability reigns and threats are minimized. Stepping outside this zone triggers uncertainty and discomfort, activating ancient survival circuits designed to keep us safe. Taking action often means confronting the unknown, risking failure or feeling vulnerable, and our brains instinctively resist. This avoidance creates a paradox. Motivation requires action, but action often demands motivation. We wait for the spark, the surge of willpower that will push us forward. Yet more often than not, motivation is elusive, a fleeting feeling that fades the moment resistance surfaces. Instead, we find ourselves stuck in a loop of planning, prepping, and delaying. The infamous procrastination cycle. Psychologists explain this with concepts like cognitive dissonance, where our actions conflict with our beliefs or desires, causing discomfort that the mind tries to resolve by avoiding action altogether. If we believe we should be productive but feel incapable, the clash creates tension that can immobilize us. To reduce this tension, the mind may rationalize inactivity, telling us we work better under pressure or that tomorrow is another day, all excuses to avoid discomfort. Another powerful force at play is learned helplessness. When we experience repeated failure or setbacks despite our efforts, our brains can internalize a sense of powerlessness, convincing us that action is futile. This mental state is a psychological trap that suppresses initiative, turning momentum into resignation. Biology adds another layer to this complex puzzle. The brain's reward system, governed by neurotransmitters like dopamine, plays a crucial role in motivation. Dopamine is not merely a pleasure chemical, it signals anticipation of reward. When an action promises immediate gratification, dopamine surges and propels us forward. But many important tasks offer delayed rewards, creating a disconnect. The brain craves instant feedback, so it gravitates toward distractions and short-term pleasures instead of sustained effort. This neurochemical reality makes forcing oneself to take consistent action an act of defiance against innate wiring and societal design alike. It requires consciously overriding the automatic urges that prioritize ease and distraction. It means cultivating discipline where motivation falls short. This is where the notion of forcing yourself becomes crucial. It's not about brute willpower alone, but about reshaping the relationship with discomfort and uncertainty. It means accepting that resistance is a natural state, not an enemy to be vanquished, but a signal to push forward regardless. Taking action day by day, even when motivation is absent, trains the brain to tolerate discomfort and rewires habitual patterns. The psychological insight here is profound. Waiting to feel ready or inspired is often the greatest trap. True change emerges not from waiting but from doing, persistently and deliberately. Each small act of forced action builds momentum, reshapes neural pathways, and chips away at the walls of resistance. Understanding this can transform how we view procrastination. It is not simply a moral failing, but a complex interplay of brain chemistry, learned behaviors, and survival instincts. And yet, it is a condition that can be overcome. through awareness, strategy, and most importantly, action that transcends feeling. This internal war between resistance and movement is the psychological battleground where freedom is won or lost. The choice to force yourself to act, day after day, becomes not just a tactic, but an essential rebellion against the inertia built into our minds and the world around us. In the landscape of the 21st century, the battle to force oneself into action is fought not only within the mind, but against an elaborate system designed to keep us passive. The forces arrayed against our willpower are subtle, pervasive, and deeply embedded in the structures of modern life. Media and technology, once heralded as tools of liberation and connection, have become instruments of control and distraction. They do not merely inform us, they shape how we think, feel, and most crucially, how we act, or fail to act. At the heart of this manipulation lies an economy built on attention. Social media platforms, streaming services, endless feeds of curated content, all engineered to capture and hold our gaze. Every scroll, every click, triggers small dopamine hits, rewarding the brain with moments of pleasure while eroding our ability to focus on meaningful tasks. This constant barrage conditions us toward short-term gratification and superficial engagement, leaving little energy for sustained effort or critical thought. Beyond distraction, modern media also wields propaganda techniques refined over decades, if not centuries. Fear, outrage, and spectacle dominate headlines and narratives, cultivating a public sphere saturated with anxiety and helplessness. When people feel overwhelmed and powerless, they retreat into passivity. The chaos of endless crises on screens around the world creates a sense that individual action is futile. Consumer culture amplifies this effect. We are encouraged to solve dissatisfaction not through action or change, but through consumption. Buy more, do more, consume more. These are the refrains of a system that thrives on dependency. Yet this endless cycle of acquisition offers only temporary relief, leaving a deeper void unfilled. The illusion of choice masks the reality of control. The psychological consequences are profound. Chronic exposure to such environments weakens our resolve, dulls our sense of agency, and fosters learned helplessness on a societal scale. The very mechanisms that once motivated survival, reward, fear, social validation, are hijacked to maintain compliance and discourage resistance. Education, and institutions too, often reinforce passivity under the guise of stability and order. Systems that prioritize conformity over curiosity, obedience over initiative, train generations to accept the status quo rather than challenge it. The subtle message, real change is not yours to make. This systemic passivity isn't accidental. It serves powerful interests invested in maintaining control, preserving hierarchies, and suppressing dissent. When millions remain distracted, anxious, or resigned, the momentum for collective action falters. Social inertia becomes a safeguard for the existing order, but passivity has costs far beyond lost potential. It corrodes mental health, breeds cynicism, and fractures communities. It widens the gap between knowledge and action, leaving critical insights untransformed into real-world change. In this way, society's encouragement of inaction deepens the very crises it claims to expose. Recognizing this manipulation is the first step toward resistance. Understanding that our inability to act is not purely personal failure, but a condition shaped by external forces reframes the struggle. It exposes the necessity of deliberate daily action as an act of defiance against distraction, despair, and control. To force oneself into movement today is to push back against a tide designed to keep us still. It is to reclaim autonomy in a world that profits from our passivity. This awareness changes the stakes of personal discipline. It is no longer merely self-improvement, but a subtle revolution of the will. In this context, the psychological battles within us are inseparable from the societal structures around us. The internal resistance and the external manipulation form a feedback loop, each reinforcing the other. To break free requires courage, insight, and relentless commitment, not just to personal goals but to reclaiming our power as individuals in an engineered reality. The challenge is daunting, yet history reminds us that even small acts of defiance can ripple outward, shattering illusions of helplessness. The question is not whether we are manipulated, because we are, but whether we will accept it, or force ourselves to act, day by day, against every odds. At the core of the human experience lies a profound truth: freedom is inseparable from choice and action. This insight, crystallized by existentialist thinkers like Jean-Paul Sartre and Albert Camus, challenges us to confront a stark reality. Our existence precedes essence, and it is through our decisions that we define who we are. Sartre famously declared that we are condemned to be free, burdened with the responsibility of choosing every moment. There is no external blueprint for meaning, no destiny inscribed by fate. Instead, each action, no matter how small, becomes a declaration of our freedom and an act of self-creation. To live authentically, we must act, not wait for inspiration, permission, or certainty. Yet this radical freedom is also terrifying. It exposes us to anxiety, despair, and the crushing weight of responsibility. Many seek refuge in inaction, treating it as escape, a denial of choice masked as helplessness or procrastination. This paralysis, though understandable, is itself a form of self-betrayal. Albert Camus explored this tension through the metaphor of the absurd, the clash between our search for meaning and a universe indifferent to our desires. The appropriate response, Camus argued, is not resignation but rebellion, an active refusal to surrender to meaninglessness. To force oneself to act daily is to embody this rebellion, to claim sovereignty over one's life, despite uncertainty and absurdity. This daily act of forcing action transcends productivity hacks or goal-setting techniques. It is an existential stance, a way to reclaim autonomy and imbue life with purpose through commitment to movement itself. It acknowledges that meaning is not given, but forged in the crucible of struggle. The psychological insights we've explored, resistance, procrastination, learned helplessness, gain new depth when viewed through this philosophical lens. They are not merely obstacles to efficiency, but existential challenges that test our capacity to embrace freedom and responsibility. In this light, forcing oneself to take action day by day is a profound form of resistance against passivity imposed by both the mind and society. It is an assertion that despite fear, uncertainty, and manipulation, we are authors of our own narrative. Moreover, this discipline cultivates authenticity. It strips away illusions of certainty and comfort, confronting us with the raw experience of choice. Through persistent action, we sculpt our identity, proving that freedom is not an abstract ideal, but a lived reality. To embrace this philosophy is to accept the paradox of human existence, that freedom brings both burden and liberation, that action is both the source of anxiety and the path to meaning, that forcing oneself to act is an act of courage and creation. This is the philosophical foundation beneath the practical struggle. It transforms the mundane act of moving forward into a radical affirmation of life itself. Understanding the psychological and philosophical depths of resistance is crucial. But the question remains, how do we translate this insight into action? How do we move from knowing to doing, especially when every part of us resists? The answer lies in cultivating practical strategies, rituals, and mindsets that create the scaffolding necessary to force ourselves into consistent action, day by day. First, recognize the transformative power of habit formation. Habits are the invisible architecture of our behavior, automating action so that it no longer depends on fluctuating motivation. The key is starting small, tiny, manageable steps that build momentum without overwhelming the mind's resistance. These small wins accumulate, creating a sense of progress that fuels further effort. For example, committing to write just one sentence daily can break through procrastination and eventually lead to entire chapters. Accountability is another critical tool. Sharing goals with a trusted friend, mentor, or community creates external pressure that can overcome internal inertia. When others are aware of your commitment, the cost of inaction becomes greater and the pull to follow through strengthens. This social dimension taps into our deeply wired need for connection and responsibility. Mental reframing techniques also play a powerful role. Instead of waiting for motivation, reframe the struggle itself as the goal. Embrace discomfort and resistance as signs of growth rather than obstacles. This shift turns forcing action into a form of self-respect, a deliberate choice to honor one's potential despite fear and doubt. Real-world stories illustrate these principles vividly. Consider the example of someone recovering from addiction who sets a daily ritual of simply showing up, whether to a meeting, a workout, or a moment of reflection. Each day forced into action builds resilience and rewires the brain for agency. Or think of an artist who, battling self-doubt, commits to creating a single sketch each morning. The ritual, no matter how small, becomes a lifeline to creativity and freedom. Yet, these strategies do not promise instant transformation. The struggle is real and ongoing. There will be days when forcing action feels like an uphill battle. The difference is that with rituals and mindsets in place, the choice to act becomes less daunting and more automatic. Ultimately, cultivating daily action is not about perfection, but persistence. It is about honoring the existential truth that freedom is forged through repeated, often difficult choices. Through habits, accountability, and reframing, we build the inner machinery to push through resistance, reclaiming control over our lives one deliberate step at a time. The battle against inaction is not a one-time victory. It is a lifelong struggle, a quiet war waged within the mind and across every moment of choice. To force oneself to act day by day is not a quest for perfection, but a testament to persistence, resilience, and the unyielding will to reclaim control over one's life. Every step forward, no matter how small or reluctant, chips away at the inertia that threatens to consume us. This relentless commitment becomes an act of defiance against fear, against distraction, and against a world often designed to keep us still. In this ongoing fight, mistakes and setbacks are inevitable, but they are not failures. They are part of the process, the friction that sharpens our resolve. Persistence is not a steady climb, but a rhythm of falls and rises, of forcing action even when the mind screams to stop. Philosophically, this struggle redefines our relationship with freedom and meaning. Freedom is not an abstract ideal, but something lived and earned through daily choice and effort. Meaning is not discovered in waiting, but created in doing. To force yourself into action is to reclaim your narrative. It is to declare that despite all internal doubts and external pressures, you will move forward. This simple yet profound act transforms the ordinary into the extraordinary, a rebellion against passivity, and a reclamation of the self. In a world engineered to discourage movement and diminish will, your persistence is a radical statement. It is the ultimate act of autonomy, creativity, and life itself. So the question remains, will you wait for motivation to arrive, or will you force yourself to take action, day by day, step by step, and become the author of your own destiny?